Wings folded and tail tucked in, Elishnish lay on the floor of the Justice Dragon Dojo, head in an upright position. Her eyes were closed, breathing steady. In short, she was doing nothing but sitting there. Upon settling on a direction for her training, there was not much time until she needed to depart in the morning. She spent her entire shift flying back and forth, wondering about what sort of strength she would cultivate. On her next day off, she returned to Master Tian, and then, "What am I doing? I'm just sitting here, right? I'm definitely just sitting here. I don't feel any stronger. I don't think you can even get stronger just sitting around doing nothing. Actually, no, that's technically how it works for dragons." Ka'atsu. A wooden plank smashed into the knuckles of her right foreclaw. It broke upon her scales, scattering splintered fragments across the floor. Her heart leapt into her throat. What was that for? Elishnish snatched her claw back. "Are you trying to make me age prematurely? Wait, is that the secret? I don't Thoughts are clouding your meditation," Master Tian told her. "You must empty your mind, control your breathing." "To what end?" Elishnish frowned. "Also, I should tell you that frost dragons can't not think." "Is that so?" Master Tian raised an eyebrow. "Then what happens while you sleep?" "We sort out our memories, review and analyze past experiences, update the list of slights against us." "You actively do that while you sleep?" "Yes. What's so strange about that?" I wasn't aware that dragons did this." "All dragons have a certain degree of awareness, even while sleeping. I suppose it is an extension of this trait for us frost dragons." Master Tian stroked his beard in contemplation, while Elishnish contemplated the fact that such a nice voice was wasted on a human. She looked around the hall of the dojo idly. The floor had been repaired, but it was still absent of any other disciples. Surely those with an interest in unarmed combat would sense the strength of Master Tian and beg for his tutelage. That, or they knew that his instruction didn't work and she was just wasting her time here. "Since you're so strong," she said, "why is it that no one comes to learn from you? Especially in this demi-human quarter, most of the races here respect strength." "It has not been long since this dojo was built," Master Tian replied, "but, since then, there's been some interference from rodents of unusual size." "Rodents of unusual size?" She frowned. "Indeed." Master Tian nodded. Elishnish's scales rippled in squeamish discomfort as she tried to imagine what the old human referred to. Did the city have such a problem? Would these giant rodents find a way to burrow under her scales? Maybe they would sneak into her mouth and gnaw away her tongue while she was sleeping, or slowly chew holes in her wings. Her wings unfurled to shake off the imaginary rodents, sending currents of air swirling around the hall. Master Tian's lapels fluttered, and he eyed a wall hanging as it swayed back and forth. The decoration had appeared some time while she was away, and it smelled no more valuable than the paper and paint that it was composed of. The artist wasn't even very good. She was certain that she could do far better. "Perhaps this is an opportunity for your training," Master Tian mused. "You want me to go out and bash rats?" Elishnish furrowed a brow. "I'm of the mind that Lady Shiltia won't be very happy if she finds out that a frost dragon has chasing rodents up and down the alleys and causing all sorts of disturbances. I believe that violence should only be used as a last resort, or reserved for those who persist in their reprehensible actions," Master Tian told her. "Since you are a bard, I believe you may be able to employ your skills in persuasion to arrive at an amicable resolution." He wanted her to negotiate with vermin. What did it even have to do with training? How big were these things, anyway? The fearsome specter of these horrible rodents who could trouble even Master Tian grew to a monstrous size. Did they even exist? She hadn't seen anything of the sort throughout the century of her living in the Azalizia Mountains, but recent memory did bring to mind at least one such creature that could sometimes be seen lurking in the shadows of the city's central district. A voice leaked thinly through the entrance of the hall. "Oh, it seems that one has appeared outside," Master Tian said. "This timing is quite fortuitous." Elishnish looked down at Master Tian worriedly. He wanted her to do something about it now? She wasn't ready to face such a powerful foe. She at least wanted time to study these creatures before confronting them. She focused her senses, but, as thin as they seemed, the walls of the hall still blocked out most of the details beyond. The voice sounded from outside again. Its tone seemed very much one of challenge. She didn't want to die yet. Master Tian, Elishnish shifted further away from the entrance. This being sounds very much like he wants to fight. Didn't you say we shouldn't easily resort to violence? I am sure that you will at least have the time to state our case, Master Tian told her. I would just like for them to stop loitering around on the street outside and chasing away prospective students. Elishnish stared down at Master Tian incredulously. Them? How many would she have to face? Given how quickly rodents tended to breed, maybe there were entire sections of the city swarming with them. She hadn't had the opportunity to explore the underground portions of Irantal yet, so she was glad that this information came to her attention before it was too late. The voice sounded again, full of confidence and belligerent intent. Master Tian looked on expectantly. Suppressing a pitiful whimper, Elishnish turned and crept over towards the entrance. She carefully worked open a crack between the doors with a claw before sliding one side open. Information from the outside flooded her senses. There were about 24 individuals of the different races in residence gathered around the nearby street. She didn't detect any giant rodents resembling the one in the central district. Was it concealing its presence somehow? Rodents were quite good at that. She carefully poked her head through the doorframe to see things directly. On the street, there was no sign of the giant rodent from the central district. There was, however, a quagga standing perfectly still straight out from the door. Come to think of it, the mole demi-humans were basically rodents, too. Elishnish lunged forward, grabbing the quagga in her jaws. She withdrew into the hall again, quietly closing the door. As she returned to Master Tian, a warm sensation pooled in her mouth. Pay, she spat him out in disgust. Pay. Gross. Why did you do that? I wasn't going to eat you. The quagga lay unresponsive in a soggy heap on the floor. She let out a small breath, then shook her head violently. Chunks of yellow ice rained over the floor. Elishnish wanted to scrape her tongue off on something. Would one of the pillars work? Was this what you were referring to? She asked Master Tian. Indeed, he replied, looking down at the unconscious quagga. However, I feel that negotiations have gone in an unintended direction from the outset. Oh, this is perfectly harmless, Elishnish reassured him, generous, even. My father would go much farther in his negotiations with the quagga. We didn't even collect any tribute from this one for the privilege of an audience. Is there really such a need? Of course, she replied matter-of-factly. Considering his manner of approach, he should be glad we didn't kill several hundred of his kin to set them straight. This may be how you conducted yourselves in the past, Master Tian told her, but there are laws in the Sorceress Kingdom that prohibit such destructive conduct. Negotiations between citizens should be, just what are you doing? Master Tian frowned down to the floor in front of her. Elishnish followed the line of his gaze. The quagga had curled up into a ball, which she was absently batting back and forth between her claws. Oh, this? She said lightly, a habit, I suppose. They always curl up like this. It's quite cathartic, I'll admit. Would you like to try? What I would like, Master Tian said, is for you to cease. Elishnish gave the quagga one last swat, and it rolled out in front of Master Tian. Her tail lazily swished back and forth as they waited for it to unfurl itself. Eventually, his head poked out, glistening nose and whiskers twitching. Is it over? He said warily, have I finally come to the land of Duray? I admit that I was never very brave, but it would be nice. His gaze turned up to Master Tian. Ah, the old human is here too. Well, he was old, after all. But why is he in Duray? The quagga continued scanning the hall, stopping at Elishnish's nearest claw. This is not Duray, he sighed. You're not too bright, are you? Elishnish said. After a moment's thought, she turned to Master Tian. This one should be taken advantage of. With little effort, we could smoothly take control of his entire clan. That was not my intention, Master Tian frowned up at her. But it does fulfill your objective along the way, yes? She said, you'll get all sorts of other benefits on top of that. Ending their attempts to interfere with the operation of this dojo is sufficient. Then why not just get rid of them yourself? Elishnish asked. His Majesty has left us with explicit instructions to not harm the citizens without just cause, Master Tian answered. Just cause? If that was the case, what constituted just cause? Lady Shaltir certainly didn't hesitate to stab her with that horrible glaive within moments of their meeting. Maybe the Frost Dragons weren't considered citizens if what Master Tian mentioned on the day they met meant anything. They weren't citizens, or even people, just dragons-monsters to be exploited for labor and crafting materials. The world was truly an unfair place. Ilishnish believed that she understood Master Tian's quandary. If the Quagga knew that his hands were tied, they'd operate in a fashion where he couldn't directly retaliate. It could be done so that it was perceived as weakness by the demi-human residents, hobbling his local standing and harming the dojo's reputation as a place to learn the ways of unarmed combat. If he called in the local security forces to disperse them, it would also be seen as weakness. Truly, he was caught in a bind. This being the case, it made his rejection of her proposal even more puzzling. It didn't appear to break any rules, so it was the perfect solution. She looked back down at the Quagga, who was now sitting on the floor and combing his fur. "You, Quagga." The Quagga kept grooming himself, so she knocked him over with a claw. "Hi-ee." She examined his scant adornment while he flopped about in a panic. "You're Zu, are you not?" "Why yes, mighty one." He bowed his head several times. "This one is Zushiru, of the Zu-Eigen clan." The Zu-Eigen clan was a small and weak group amongst the Quagga relative to the clans of Pu, who made up the majority of the race's population in the Azalizia range. She guessed their presence in Irantal meant that they had been tossed out after whatever happened in Fiobukana. "If you join with us, Zushiru," her imperious voice filled the hall, "we shall grant you control of half of your entire clan." "Ah really?" Zushiru looked up at her with wide eyes. Master Tian cleared his throat. Ilishnish sighed. She was doing him a favor, yet all there was in return was his thankless admonition. "Why did you come to interfere with this dojo?" Ilishnish asked. Zushiru looked back and forth between Ilishnish and Master Tian. A low growl rose from Ilishnish's throat. "F for the prosperity of my clan," he squeaked. "How does making noise in front of this hall bring prosperity to your clan?" "Because the sects compete for disciples," he explained. "The Mountain Mole sect must bring in disciples, or our clan will starve." Zushiru looked down, dry washing his hands. "The Azure Sky, Iron Fist sect is too strong, so the only thing we can do is draw students away from here." He looked to Master Tian. "Please, you are but one old human, but we have many mouths to feed." Ilishnish turned her attention to Master Tian. He wasn't going to cave into Zushiru's weak mewlings, was he? "I can't imagine that you have any obligation to acquiesce to this pitiful request," she prompted. "I have no desire to bring any hardship to His Majesty's subjects," Master Tian replied, "but there appear to be quite a few misunderstandings here in the first place." Too soft. Master Tian was too easy to bend with heartfelt pleas. It was lucky for him that his strength afforded him leeway for such imprudent indulgences. "First of all," Master Tian went on, "this Azure Sky, Iron Fist sect, are you perhaps referring to the orphanage?" Ilishnish had no idea what an orphanage was, beyond it being a place to store loose whelps, and neither did Zushiru, it appeared. The Quagga's mouth worked around the strange word. "I don't know what that means, but it's a place filled with young humans. A dangerous human female is the leader there. They say that she will not die, even if her head is taken." "That's absurd," Ilishnish snorted. "What do you take humans for, adventurers?" "It's true," Zushiru said, "but unlike adventurers, who are said to not die even when they are killed, this sect leader continues to move her when her head is torn right off. My clanmates have witnessed this. One night, a wolf beastman snatched her head away, but the body chased the beastman around the bowl until it was subdued and beaten with such force that the ground quaked after every blow." Ilishnish's jaw fell open in mute horror. That certainly was terrifying. What he mentioned about those adventurers was also terrifying. It was no wonder that they were universally feared. Master Tian stepped forward. "Perhaps a brief visit will address your concerns." Both Ilishnish and Zushiru shook their heads in unison. "We should stay as far away as possible from such a savage individual," Ilishnish said. "There's absolutely no reason to take such risks." "They are mostly younglings," Zushiru said, But there are a great many there, some of them even larger than myself. They have gleaming eyes and large teeth. If things go badly, we will be overwhelmed and eaten." They looked at Master Tian with pleading expressions, but the old man was not dissuaded. "Come, now," Master Tian clapped his hands, then gestured towards the door. "Let us be off. I'm sure no harm will befall you." Ilishnish slinked out of the entrance of the Justice Dragon Dojo on the heels of Zushiru. Unlike the other sections of the city, the demi-human quarter remained active through all the hours of the day. The streets and terraces at night were frequented by those species possessing dark vision or something superior to it, like tremescence or blind sight. This night seemed busier than she last remembered, though the population was still a small fraction of the human-dominated areas of the city. How the denizens of the quarter felt about having a 10-meter-long frost dragon walking by was difficult to discern. She couldn't decide whether they were simply too busy to pay attention or pointedly trying not to draw her attention. There were also many races present that she had no experience with, so their expressions and body language were unknown to her. Then again, she was a frost dragon, so any of these weak individuals who weren't paying attention to their surroundings most likely did not take any more note than they would a passing wagon. Through her day together with Pam the previous week, she had learned the behavior and flows of traffic in the city, allowing her to subconsciously navigate the street with no difficulty or incident. As they walked through the busiest section of the main street, their progress slowed and Ilishnish looked around for the source of the disruption. Along one side of the paved road, which ran from the western gatehouse to the southern one, were what looked to be stands similar to those that could be found in the plazas around the city. Though none were occupied, Ilishnish examined them curiously as they walked by. "This place seems to have filled in a bit," she murmured absently. "Indeed," Master Tian said. "It is an encouraging sight." Encouraging? What was so encouraging about any of this? She eyed the small groups of demi-humans as they milled about the tables. "Do they plan on opening some sort of market here?" Ilishnish asked. "The way these tables are organized is reminiscent of the plazas around the city." "As I understand it," Master Tian answered, "a handful of human interests are trying to encourage commercial activity in this quarter." "To what end?" She furrowed a brow as her eye wandered over the tables. "The tribal peoples here live uncomplicated lives. They have no appreciation for commerce as humans or dwarves do." "I spoke at length with a few of the organizers," he said. "According to one of them, the Great Forest of Tob is considered a mostly untapped resource, so there is great interest in the merchant community over what the tribes living there can deliver to the city." Another expressed a desire to see all of the races have their own traders and spokespeople, and for the citizens of the Sorceress Kingdom to come closer together through their peaceful interactions in Erantal. It is an admirable objective, and in line with His Majesty's desire that all citizens would partake of the nation's prosperity. Ilishnish glanced at the stands again, then examined the individuals that they passed along their way. Everything about them spoke of their simple lifestyles, and she couldn't imagine anything being displayed here beyond raw plants, stones, hides and simple crafts. Visitors who came to sell the occasional findings of actual value here would just be feeding the human-owned industries of the city, who would proceed to take the lion's share of the prosperity. Zushiru, waddling forward before her, also looked about, his fur standing on end. He shrunk away from every sudden noise and movement as they made their way along the street. Despite his seemingly timid behavior, Ilishnish decided that this particular Quagga was actually quite brave. Even when scouting, they tended to move in groups. Seeing one wandering around alone in a strange place, above ground, no less, was essentially unheard of. "As brave as you are for your kind," she told him. "Picking a fight with Master Tian seems a bit much. Well, more like suicidal." I didn't know such a monster was inside," he exclaimed. "This place is strange, nothing is as it seems." "You're right," she replied. "This place is strange. The people here are sly, they veil their strength and exploit the deeds of others, daring to scheme even against those stronger than themselves. It is not like our old home, where all things are determined through honest displays of dominance. This city is a place where the strong rule using the methods of the weak. Though, since the Quagga are weak, it should suit your people well, should it not?" But what can we do?" Zushiru said despondently. "The soil is soft and poor, there are no caves, and groundwater does not collect here. We are forbidden from tunneling beyond the boundaries of the quarter, so we must submit ourselves to the mercy of others to survive. Didn't you start farming recently? Ilishnish asked. Mushrooms and lizards, if I recall correctly. The Poo jealously guard this secret technique, Zushiru told her bitterly. The Zoo do not know how. All we know are the ways of our kind, and they gain us no advantages here. Ilishnish supposed that he had actually a good grasp on his clan's present situation. The human city was quite insidious in its ways, promoting its systems of exchange. Simple people that lived honest lives, like most of the residents of the demi-human quarter, were quickly ensnared by its cycles of labor and consumption. The rulers of the city were not idle about it, either, at least not at the start. Whenever a new group of people arrived, a powerful dark elf and some sort of human minion were sure to appear shortly after. They would come bearing essential sustenance and supplies, and the human would tell them the ways of the city. Then they would be directed to their first places of employment, usually as labor for the ongoing construction projects around the quarter. Past that point, the poor, unwitting demi-humans would become trapped. There was no time to think or figure things out, only time to work and rest. She wasn't sure if there was any way to escape it. Not that their plight mattered to her, she was still trying to get herself out of her own predicament. Studying how the human city functioned led to some clues, but a real solution still eluded her. They arrived at the large complex at the other end of the demi-human quarter, the same place where she had first encountered several powerful individuals, including Lady Schultier. Master Tien pulled on a chain dangling near the gate, and the chiming of a bell issued from within. Miss Lupus Regina's head popped out from behind one of the buildings. She came forward with a gaggle of immature humans following in her wake. "Oh, if it isn't Master Sabos," she said as she came forward. "Looking for someone? Master Sabos? Didn't he prefer to be called Master Tien? Perhaps there was some difference in the relationships here." "Lupus Regina, shouldn't you be in Carney?" Master Tien frowned gravely at her. "Shizu and Entama are there right now," Miss Lupus Regina replied. "They were passing through on the way to the Great Lake, so I had them watch over the place while I came over here. The place just keeps expanding, even with the dwarves all moved in, they keep changing the rest of the place with their improvements." "If your business here is concluded," he told her, "you should return to your duties." The smooth way in which Master Tien and Miss Lupus Regina interacted spoke of some long-standing relationship between them, but Ilishnish could not tell what it might be from their brief exchange. Miss Lupus Regina appeared to defer to him, but her attitude was so casual that one would doubt if she did. "Yep, I'm heading out right now, don't you worry about it." Miss Lupus Regina turned around to look over the human whelps that were standing behind her. "Big Sis Lupu has to get back to work now," she told them. "Make sure you don't get caught misbehaving, cause that's bad. What do bad children get?" "The fist," they yelled out in unison. Both Sushiru and Ilishnish jumped at the noise, and the Quagga scurried behind Ilishnish. Though Miss Lupus Regina appeared to be threatening them with some dire punishment, the young humans responded energetically, each holding up one of their tiny, balled-up hands in the air. Weak as they were, these human whelps were every bit as vicious as wimmerlings. Zushiru was right to fear this place. "That's right," Miss Lupus Regina said with a satisfied nod. "Big Sis Yuri is really scary. I might be able to take a few good hits, but you pups'll get smushed into paste for sure." "Lupu!" A shout issued from somewhere unseen, rolling out from between the buildings towards the gate. Miss Lupus Regina leapt straight up onto the nearby wall and disappeared into the night. Another figure appeared from the depths of the complex, and the crowd of children solemnly parted to let her through. It was another female, wearing a long dress that some of the more mature human women around the city favored. Despite her severe-looking human garb, however, Ilishnish immediately sensed this one was not a human. She exhibited none of the telltale signs of the living, and her scent was extremely weak. Like Lady Schiltier and her vampire brides, this one was most likely undead. The undead female ran her gaze over the human whelps, then let out a resigned sigh. "Really, that Lupu," she said, putting strange ideas into their heads. "Get back to your rooms, children, it's long past bedtime." She finished walking up to the open gate, and the children dispersed behind her, disappearing beyond the range of Ilishnish's senses. "Do your sisters frequent the orphanage often?" Master Tien asked. "Shizu and Entama do, the woman replied, and Lupus Regina comes by to see Lady Negredo when alterations to the counter-divination arrangements in Carney are required. Narbril and Solution have not. I was hoping that exposing them to the orphans would mellow them out a bit. I see, so it isn't working out so well? The results are mixed. Shizu only gravitates to those that she finds cute, and I still haven't figured out what her criteria are. Entama has become a remarkably excellent caregiver. At first, I kept worrying about whether she would try to eat a few, but the children all seem to love her very much. Lupus Regina, however, only sees opportunities to rope them into her mischief. She paused, eyes widening for a moment. Please forgive me, it seems that I have forgotten my manners. Welcome, Lure, Master Sabos. The undead female lowered her head slightly. Is there something I might be able to assist you with? I've brought a fellow who has expressed some concerns that I thought would best be put to rest, Master Tien replied. This Quagoa here, Gem, where did he go? Elishnish flicked him out from behind her with a flick of her tail. Zushiro let out a startled cry, rolling forward to stop before the undead female's feet. His name is Zushiro, Master Tien said. I believe he and his fellows are starting some sort of school here. Zushiro, Miss Yuri, director of this fine orphanage. Zushiro unballed himself and dropped to his knees, kowtowing in a decidedly Quagoa-like fashion. It reminded Elishnish somewhat of their king, Peri Euro, prostrating himself before her father, but it lacked the customary tribute of precious ores and gemstones to pay for an audience. This one offers his greetings to you, dread leader of the Azure Sky, Iron Fist sect. This one is Zushiro, who humbly presents himself before your fearsome presence. Sect? Miss Yuri adjusted the frames of her spectacles. What is this all about? I believe he and his fellows consider both the orphanage and my dojo competition for prospective students, Master Tien said. What sort of school are they founding? Miss Yuri's voice turned curious. Our Mountain Mole sect is one that teaches the foundations of Quagoa combat. Oh dread one, Zushiru's voice drifted up from the cobblestones. We're trying to find a way to earn more, money? So that we may improve living conditions for our clan. I see, but why would you consider this orphanage competition? You take in the young, do you not? Zushiru looked up at Miss Yuri. There are many powerful beings here, why else would this place exist but to collect the impressionable so they may be inducted into your sect? I'm not sure where you've heard this from. Miss Yuri gazed down at Zushiru with a look of concern, but our instruction is not in the ways of violence. The Azure Sky, Iron Fist Institute for Promising Children is a place where poor orphans are gathered and furnished with the skills and education to become productive members of society. Any who show promise or interest in martial vocations will be introduced to places where they can better pursue those paths, which are not practiced here. What was the purpose of that? Taking in whelps and providing what Miss Yuri described seemed monumentally wasteful. The strongest would naturally rise to the top on their own to be picked out, at no cost to oneself. There must be some hidden benefit to all this. What happens after you're done instructing them? Elishnish asked. Will they then be your minions, sent out to bring back wealth and prestige? Miss Yuri looked up at her with a furrow on her brow. Elishnish returned her look. It was a perfectly reasonable assumption. Who is this, Master Sabos? Miss Yuri asked. She goes by the name of Shiva, Master Tien told Miss Yuri. Lady Shiltir left her with me to address some matters of discipline. This Shiva certainly has quite the self-serving outlook, Miss Yuri said. I'm surprised she sent her to you, given Lady Shiltir's disposition. I'm surprised she survived at all with her tone. Do you know what it is that she did? She told me that she does not know, Master Tien said, and Lady Shiltir left before I could request a better explanation. Seeing that I've been trying to raise some upstanding individuals for Lord Dines, she might be thinking along those same lines. Lady Shiltir has been quietly stretching out her hand over the past few months, employing various locals for her purposes. Is that so? Miss Yuri examined Elishnish with a critical eye. Lady Shiltir, Gem, I suppose dragons do fight with their natural weapons, but I've never heard of a dragon with job class levels before. Indeed, Master Tien said. I held the same impression, but she professes to be a bard. A bard? Miss Yuri tilted her head curiously, then perhaps some sort of dancer? That was my conclusion, as well. Master Tien somehow straightened his already straight posture. and adjusted his pure white tie. "We should get back to training, as our time in the city is limited. Thank you for your assistance in clarifying matters, Miss Yuri." Miss Yuri lowered her head with a gentle smile, spreading her skirts in a graceful curtsy. "It was no trouble at all, Master Sabos." On their return from the orphanage, they discovered a small crowd in the midst of where the market stands were being set up along the street. A pair of human females stood at the center of everyone's attention, speaking at length to them. Ilishnish watched them out of one eye as they skirted around the gathering. From the subject matter, these were two of the humans who had come to take advantage of the state of affairs in the quarter. One of them looked up at her, and she noted in passing that her pupils were red. The human female offered her a bright smile, and Ilishnish averted her gaze. The diminutive human looked so weak, yet she gave her that unflinching look. She wondered what sort of underhanded schemes were in play that gave her the confidence to express herself so boldly to an obviously superior existence. Another detail tempted her to examine the human again, but she stifled her curiosity to avoid meeting the human's gaze again. "Those humans appear to be able to see in the dark," Ilishnish said. "I thought their kind needed light to see. Are there different variants of humans?" "The local humans all appear to be the same basic species. Perhaps they possess some item that confers dark vision," Master Tian offered. "It should be one of the many low-level enchantments available in this region." "One of those humans is known to me," Zushiru said. "She is a kind lady that goes by the name of Florine. She does not appear especially big or strong compared to her underlings, yet she commands them with absolute confidence, and they all obey without question. This makes her a human lord, I think." "A kind lady?" Ilishnish was instantly suspicious of this human lord. What is it that makes her so kind? She comes to bring the residents supplies and teaches us the ways of this city." Zushiru replied defensively. "She does so of her own volition, and offers us fair prices for shipments of food. The first one was even free." "Ah, so it was the human minion that went around with the dark elf." Ilishnish wondered if she should let him know that their freedom was being stolen away from them by this kind human. Zushiru, despite his wariness of overt threats, seemed blithely unaware of anything else. He probably didn't even realize that the explanation offered by Miss Yuri was no reassurance at all. They would raise their whelps and send them to whoever offered the greatest benefits. Given the underlying relationship between Master Tian and Miss Yuri that Ilishnish detected, any potential students for the Midnight Mole sect would be sent straight to the Justice Dragon Dojo instead. The games of profit and power being played in this city were merciless to simple, honest folk. If one of them was Lady Gonye," Master Tian said, "then there's a good chance that the other was Lady Wagner. They are often seen together, good friends, if memory serves correctly." Ilishnish shook her head sadly. The entire board was well and truly rigged. You were either one of them, or an outsider to be exploited. You know of them?" Zushiru asked. "Indeed," Master Tian nodded. "Lady Wagner was of great assistance some months past, delivering a great quantity of liquor while the city's trade was at a standstill. The both of them also took the initiative to settle some matters in the West, and they are now actively working to improve the state of the Sorceress Kingdom in many areas. This activity and the Demi-Human Quarter is but one of many projects they've spearheaded in the city and beyond." Ilishnish sniffed derisively at his statement. "Do you have some objection to this?" Master Tian asked. Rather than any objections, Ilishnish said, "I fail to comprehend the purpose of these convoluted schemes. The Sorcerer King has so much power at his disposal that it's entirely unnecessary. In the face of his pure might, all must heed his will or be erased from existence. There is no point in whatever all this is supposed to be." "I believe His Majesty to be a kind and benevolent master," he told her. "Have you, too, not gained many benefits from his rule?" Ilishnish narrowed her eyes, uncertain whether the words Master Tian said were in jest or not. "I wonder how many of the residents here respect him for his benevolence." She scanned the street, locating a pair of lizardmen loitering ahead of them. "You two lizard folk," she stopped to speak to them, "how is it that you've come under the Sorcerer King's rule?" They shuffled backwards as her head loomed close, then exchanged looks at her question. "We were subjugated last year," one of them replied. "We are currently in the city because His Majesty, suggested that we should travel." "What of other tribes near your home?" or perhaps other races. They were conquered as well, the lizard man said, by Lord Cocytus, on behalf of His Majesty. Everyone around our lake was consolidated under his rule. Thank you, she nodded at them, and they continued on their way. I saw what was left of the Quago and Theoburkana, she eyed Master Tian pointedly as they went along. There's no reason for me to believe that it was some act of benevolence. My family was the same, my father was murdered right in our own home, in front of his 3 wives. My half-brother was killed shortly after for expressing his dissent over matters. I heard they were both taken away to be dismantled for crafting materials. My eldest brother was given away to be turned into a pet, and now the rest of us are slaves of Lady Schultier. Slaves? Master Tian said in a grave voice, though it sounds out of sorts for one such as her. I hear that Lady Schultier has put much thought and care into the aerial transportation network. You've been provided much to ensure your good health. What we've been provided with is the means to toil indefinitely, Elishnish told him, and no option to refuse. Perhaps it is as you say, and she puts much thought and care into the aerial transportation network itself, but we frost dragons are nothing more than beasts of burden. They left the main street, walking up the lane towards the Justice Dragon Dojo. This is besides the point, however, she continued. All of the beings you see here follow the same rule, the unbreakable rule of the world. Prosperity, wealth, and even their very lives will be taken without the means to retain them. Benevolence and good intentions mean nothing if everything can be trampled underfoot. They gather under the Sorcerer King because his overwhelming strength permits their continued existence. They did not come to him for his goodwill. Elishnish's gaze wandered over the quarter until it was drawn by the brightly lit streets beyond the southern gatehouse. These humans, too, she mused. I wonder how Irantal and its surrounding lands ended up under the Sorcerer King's rule? A steely expression formed over Master Tian's features, and they followed him back into the hall. He reseated himself at the head of the hall, Elishnish and Zushiro before him. It is not a bad thing for the strong to rule with benevolence, he said after some time, and it is right to assist those in need. She wanted to roll her eyes. It appeared that their views were irreconcilable. Elishnish looked over at Zushiro. Zushiro, she said, what do you think about all of this? Me? He looked between them nervously. My thoughts are as dust to such powerful beings. Elishnish smirked, her tail swishing smugly over the cedar floorboards. But is it not better for everyone to be happy? Her tail stopped, and she glared down at him balefully. In hindsight, it was a mistake to ask this gullible idiot. Master Tian nodded sagely. I concur, he said. Strength alone is nothing to be prideful about. If one has power, it is best used for the benefit of all. Elishnish sighed. Debating the matter anymore would only plague her with headaches, so she decided to press on to things that actually held practical value. Half the night is gone, she said, and I must return to the north in the afternoon. Weren't we supposed to be undergoing some sort of training? Master Tians looked from Zushiro to Elishnish, then back again. Perhaps this fine gentleman would like to learn alongside you, he said. This Zushiro? The Quago's nose twitched. I have heard it is more beneficial to have a partner to train with, Master Tian said. You, too, have an interest in self-improvement, do you not? Well, yes, but... He's going to die, Elishnish stated flatly. Zushiro nodded empathetically. As this is training, Master Tian told them, you should not be striving to kill one another. The objective is to achieve mastery over oneself. Dancers are those who harness the power of their art by weaving it through bodily form. This building probably won't survive if I start dancing inside. I suppose that is probably true. A light knock issued from the door. The three exchanged glances and Zushiro, being the closest to the entrance, went to answer it. Seriously, it wasn't even the Quago's place and he just naturally started working for them. He slid open the door and issued the most piteous squeak Elishnish had ever heard come from a Quago before keeling over. Say boss? Elishnish felt a squeak of her own escape when she heard the voice coming in from across the threshold. Welcome, Lady Schultier. Master Tian rose to his feet. I was moving some demi-humans and their goods to the market nearby, Lady Schultier said, so I thought I'd see how things were coming along. She stepped around the collapsed Zushiro and into the hall. Her crimson gaze swept over the interior, stopping at Elishnish. "Oh, I see that this child has returned without need for prompting," she said. "This discipline of yours appears to be working wonders so far, Sabos. How long until you're done with her?" We have only just begun, so it should still be some time yet," Master Tian replied. "If I might ask, is there something specific that you would like addressed? Getting in contact with you has been quite difficult recently." "I've been wonderfully busy, after all." Head held high, a note of pride entered Lady Schultier's voice. "As for this child, I suppose any improvements would be welcome, but your priority should be placed on her loose tongue." "Her loose tongue, you say?" "Indeed," Lady Schultier nodded. "She is the source of the frost giant rumors that Albedo has been tied up in knots over recently." The air turned deathly still, and Master Tian slowly looked back at Elishnish. She slowly started edging away. "Ho," he said, adjusting his pristine, white gloves. She claimed that she did not know why she was sent here. "I told her quite clearly when she asked," Lady Schultier told him. "It was just before we appeared here." "I see," he fixed Elishnish with his steely gaze. "It seems that discipline of another form is required." "Why?" Elishnish's protest ended at its first syllable. What happened? Master Tian only looked like he had turned to face her. How was she suddenly careening through the air? Her senses were jarred violently as she bounced off a pillar and smashed through the back wall of the building, rolling over and over until she hit the base of the quarter wall. Memories of the last time she was sent flying in such a fashion flooded her mind with horror. She spread her wings to escape, making it all of 2 meters off of the ground before she felt something latch onto her tail. Her trajectory abruptly reversed and she whipped into the ground, sending a cloud of dust into the air. "Lying is bad," Master Tian's voice could be heard through Elishnish's coughing. "Bad children get the fist." Lady Schultier's silvery voice chimed lightly through the hole in the wall. "It appears that the truth is bad for me, as well," Elishnish croaked. She spread her wings again, flapping frantically, then she couldn't. A sharp pain spread from her shoulder, and a sense of creeping dread sent an uncontrollable shiver of despair through her. She flopped to the ground, landing painfully on her side. Elishnish raised her head, turning it to look back over herself. "My wing," she cried, "you." Lady Schultier's instructions were to not allow your escape, and Lady Albedo's instructions were to, well, let's just say your present circumstances are quite fortunate by comparison. Elishnish pondered why her current circumstances were quite fortunate while the pain ebbed away and the ring of regeneration slowly did its work. She tested her wing gingerly, then it collapsed over her back again in an explosion of agony. The only indication that Master Tian had even done anything was the slight shifting of his gaze to her shoulder. "You evil. Regeneration, is it?" Master Tian said in an unsettlingly calm voice, "Then I shall employ a more lasting measure." She had absolutely no desire to find out what a more lasting measure entailed. Scrambling to her feet, she bolted forward to climb up the wall. Her left arm went numb, and she went face first into the stones. Her body grew heavy, and she struggled to move even slightly. "You may be able to recover from physical injuries," Master Tian told her, "but regeneration will not save you from the effects of debilitating skills." Master Tian lifted her bodily off of the ground, and she zipped back through the hole in the wall of the dojo. Lady Schultier's sadistic leer crossed her vision before Elishnish hit the ground and slid across the polished floor. The building shuddered when she collided with the pillars framing the entrance. "I knew you had it somewhere in you," Lady Schultier smiled in approval. The sound of crisp footsteps emanated from the hole in the wall. Elishnish weakly cringed away from Master Tian's approach, but he turned and reseated himself at the head of the hall. "You can still do quite a bit more, you know," Lady Schultier said. "Though your direct, unarmed attacks easily injure her, her damage reduction is already high enough that all of this bouncing around doesn't do anything at all. She goes back to work in the afternoon, however, so don't do anything that would cause problems with scheduling." "I do not derive pleasure from this," Master Tian said. "I have, however, seen what the people here can turn into, should their immoral actions remain unchecked. Considering her personality, I believe it best to admonish her with a firm hand." "Yes," Lady Schultier nodded, "I've come to the same conclusion about these frost dragons, since they seem to mainly function off of the experiences retained in their memory. it's best to employ corrective methods that they will never forget. Since she cannot recover from injuries directly inflicted by me, however, there is a limit as to how far I can go. You have no such limitations, but it's a shame that you never seem to enjoy such things. She has a ring of regeneration, and, as a bard, she can magically heal herself. You may train her quite thoroughly if you believe it to be a productive course. Is that so? The strange gleam returned to Master Tian's eye. I will certainly keep this in mind. Seeing that you have not delivered her to Lady Albedo, am I correct to assume that this loose tongue of hers was not purposely employed in a malicious manner against the Sorceress Kingdom? I arrived at that conclusion after some investigation. Yes, Lady Shaltier replied. She is simply an ignorant primitive that does not understand appropriate conduct in civilized society. Fortunately, her kind is easily corrected when the appropriate methods are employed, so it is a salvageable case. That is good to hear, Master Tian said. I shall endeavor to instill some propriety into her during the course of our training. I can't wait to see how she turns out, Lady Shaltier beamed. Now, if you'll excuse me, I must return to my duties. It's so good to be busy.